the damage wrought by Typhoon Odette. In the agriculture sector, the amount of damage has now reached 2.6 billion pesos. Odette affected almost 35,000 farmers and fishers. That's according to the Agriculture Department. The volume of production losses reached over 87,000 metric tons across 60,000 hectares of agricultural areas. The DPWH, meanwhile, estimates infrastructure damage from Odette to have reached almost 586 million pesos as of today. The agency says 12 roads across 4 regions affected by Odette are still closed to the traffic, while 34 have already been reopened. The latest tally from the NDRRMC showed the death toll reaching 177. In his pre-recorded speech last night, President Duterte declared a state of calamity in 6 regions battered by the Odette, which is the strongest storm to hit the country this year. These are Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Central Visayas, Eastern Visayas, Northern Mindanao, and Caraga. The economic team says the country's GDP growth is now likely to fall below estimates because of the typhoon's impact. And with the increasing damage tally and casualties from Typhoon Odette, the PSEi as well seems to have declined today. You can see on my terminal here the index falling off a cliff here. That's down 0.7% to well below 72,000 levels, 7,200 levels rather. That's at 7119.19 at the close. Let's take a look at our movers. Here you can see a couple of those sitting out this sell-off, in particular Jollibee Foods jumping by an impressive 4.9%, followed by Converge and URC. Aboitiz Equity Ventures was one of the losers yesterday, so reversing its fortune there. But on the other end, you have SMIC continuing to bleed there. It's one of the losers of the morning. It's down by 2.9% together with another conglomerate, Ayala Corporation, and Bloomberry suffering down by 4.5%. But there's actually one specific counter which is in focus, and that is the financial space. You can see Union Bank staging, a bit of a recovery here after having been heavily sold off amid all of those issues, together with BDO with hacking. Union Bank up by 3.2%. BDO, however, not feeling the love today. This, according to a statement from the National Privacy Commission, they are investigating the possible personal data breach, of course, which involved unauthorized processing of personal data, which suspected the compromise of multiple BDO accounts. They did mention they're looking into the relevance of BDO's now 10-year-old system to the alleged security incident, and they want to determine whether they actually have sufficient technical, organizational, and physical safeguards, whether these were in place to have prevented these unauthorized disclosures of personal information. So BDO, again, being very, very clearly watched by investors on how they will be recovering from those losses. Checking in on the headlines, we're keeping our eyes on the World Bank has approved some $300 million, that's around 15 billion pesos of additional funding to scale up the country's vaccination drive. Now, this loan is expected to provide the Philippines with additional 27 billion doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. The fresh funding will also be used to strengthen the country's health systems and overcome the impact of the pandemic, especially on the poor and the most vulnerable. In April of last year, the World Bank approved a $100 million loan for the country's pandemic needs, as well as another $500 million loan that was earlier this year to fund the vaccine rollout. Circling back to the updates on Typhoon Odette's aftermath, we have humanitarian flights continuing to arrive at the Siargao domestic airport. The private flights seek to deliver relief goods to Siargao and fly out tourists from the island. Surigao del Norte's 1st District Representative Bingo Matugas said that 15 tons of relief goods have been provided to the Siargao residents. More countries are also pledging help for victims of the deadly typhoon. One of them is Singapore, which is eyeing to contribute $60,000 or 3 million pesos for disaster relief efforts, and Ireland, which is sending 250,000 euros, that's around 14 million pesos. The European Union is also providing 1.7 million euros, that's around 95.7 million pesos, to support those affected by the typhoon. Pag-asa is currently monitoring another low-pressure area outside the Philippine area of responsibility, which they say has a 60 to 70% chance of developing into a tropical depression. The LPA is expected to enter PAR, that's by Sunday at the earliest. With a World Bank loan in the works and the Bayanihan spirit getting the country through the worst of times, the Philippines is also getting some help from its allies and partners. Here to share with us how they are assisting, we have with us Lars Wittig. He's the president of the European Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. Good afternoon, Lars, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you.
Lars, we had reported how the EU is specifically assisting in these trying times. What about the European Chamber of Commerce here in the Philippines? How are you, chipping in and feeling the Bayanihan spirit for these relief efforts?
Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking what we are seeing on television and hearing from our members in the affected region. We have collections in progress through our social network and our website. So eccp.com, and we are receiving donations there. Then we are coordinating with the LGUs in Cebu, Visayas. We have 59 member companies. We have one full-time employee based in Cebu, and currently our executive director, Florian Gotten, is actually in Bohol. And it's quite devastating reports we're getting from down there. Even Cebu City, the offices down there from within our company, IWG, we have 2 offices in Cebu City. No electricity, not even water yet, and it's very irregular communication lines as well.
Okay, thank you for that update. Now, the European Union is providing 1.7 million euros. Of course, the damages are in the billions. Could we possibly be hoping for more assistance at this point?
I cannot speak on behalf of the EU, but as far as our member companies are concerned, I think it is important to all the time establish these partnerships with the private sector, because a lot of our member companies have significant resources and logistics in place just within food distribution alone. So those partnerships is literally what we are putting together.
Okay, so we all do what we can at the moment. Let's shift the discussion towards how you feel as part of the chamber that this would affect the Philippine economy. We've already gone through, some trying times during COVID. We were just at the brink of a recovery. What's your sentiment right now?
Yeah, you're right. If we had spoken 2 weeks ago, it would have been all sunshine, and now we have these at least 2 very dark clouds hanging over our economy and well-being, health. It is Omicron, and it is, of course, Odette. Omicron and Odette, first of all, the storm is probably going to lower the GDP growth, but I still believe it will be at least at 4% for the total year. And don't forget that looking forward, we are projected to have the highest growth year on year among all comparable ASEAN countries, the so-called ASEAN 5. So there's still a lot of sunshine ahead of us, but Odette, yes, is going to put a damper on, lower the growth expectations here at the very end of the year. And then we also need to show due diligence and prepare for a possible wave of Omicron.
Okay, how has the way that the government has handled not just the COVID pandemic, but also, these types of events. How has that affected business confidence when we talk about foreign investors looking into the Philippines?
Well, of course, it has taken its toll that we had lockdowns that were much more persistent than other comparable markets in the region. Nevertheless, I must say that things are really starting to even bounce back in the same manner as it is seen in Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. Much in the same manner. So that is a positive. As far as the vaccinations are concerned, there was much was lacking, but I must say again, in the more recent weeks or almost months, it has really picked up in speed. And these days we are surpassing Indonesia, as we are exceeding 50% of total population. And be careful with the percentage, because we often hear that 80 plus, 90 plus % have been vaccinated. That's not accurate. That's a target of adult population, and 39% of the population are below 18. So let's do like all other countries. What is it as percent of total population? Because the virus doesn't care about ages, right? Again, we have now exceeded 50%, and we are even surpassing Indonesia. So a very, very strong pickup, which is very impressive, because keeping that momentum will surely put us in a much better position if and when an Omicron wave should hit the Philippines. But again, going back to the other dark cloud, Odette, clearly that is also disrupting the vaccination progress in the affected areas.
Okay. To what extent have the travel bans affected the business continuity of the chamber members?
Yeah, we have helped hundreds, literally, of members to get back to their businesses, and it is difficult to justify big investments if you're not able to send people in to be near and manage on their investments and assets, especially during very difficult times as this COVID crisis. So, but it is not just the Philippines. I mean, to be in all fairness, that has been the case throughout the region and throughout the world. And it remains very unpredictable what and where we can travel. Only a few weeks from now, we saw that Thailand opened up drastically, and that was great for them. But with Omicron, they just announced, I believe yesterday or the day before, that they are closing down again for tourism and probably also general business travel. So we are still seeing quite a bit of limitations in those regards in the Philippines. Let's not forget, tourism is a very important industry for the Philippine economy. It is representing almost the same share of our economy as tourism does for Thailand. However, in the Philippines, it is 80% of tourism here is domestic. So I can only hereby encourage everybody to travel more in the Philippines now that we are actually able to do it.
Do you have initiatives, not just with the chamber, but maybe also EU-Philippine initiatives to improve the situation? Are you lobbying for, a faster reopening so that we can get the business community back in?
Yes, we are all the time working for a faster reopening and advocating so in our contacts with the government. We often reach out to them, and certainly also vice versa. They reach out to the European Chamber of Commerce here in the Philippines, as well as the joint foreign chambers where we represent the 40 plus European countries. But of course, it has to be, we all have to be pragmatic and realistic. So it is just important that we all the time adapt. So when things are better, and it sure was both here and globally Omicron at least, then it is important that we quickly allow people to be able to travel again. Mobility is really a key to recovery, and lack of mobility is really, it is like strangling businesses.
Last question before we let you go. Some positive developments when it comes to opening up specific sectors to foreign investment. You've got the telco space, for instance, and other regulated industries here. Any interest that you're garnering from large European conglomerates or companies that would like to participate in these new initiatives?
Yeah, first of all, we are still celebrating the Public Service Act that finally was approved. And that basically allows for say, European companies to go in and take 100% ownership in telecom and air carriers and domestic shipping. These are all areas that before we didn't have access to, and this will be very enticing for the investors, but it will certainly also be great for the Philippines, not only to get the investments, but thereby also allowing and enabling for better services and products at a lower price to the consumers. One of the key reasons for higher inflation at the moment is exactly logistics. So getting some more players in, more natural competition is going to benefit everybody.
Okay, so looking forward to some news on that front, on some interest from that side. Thank you so much for that update. That was Lars Wittig, ECCP President.
Thank you.
Before we end our broadcast today, many of our kababayans in the provinces were hit by Typhoon Odette and do not have food nor water. They have lost their homes and some have lost their loved ones. Let us make them feel the spirit of Filipino bayanihan. You may send your donations through the following channels, which are now being flashed on your screens. Let us all make them feel that through this pandemic, through this devastation, tuloy pa rin ang Pasko. Thank you very much for joining us. Today is December 22nd, 2021. Catch Businessworld live again tomorrow. That's at 9:30 a.m. for the market open, 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Danie Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.